All right, let's go ahead and get started this morning or afternoon, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to the final webinar in our series of 7 under the Art of the Impossible webinar, the Art of Possible webinar series. How's that for a good start? Okay, so webinar 7, this is around proactive intelligence for leadership. So really what we're getting to here is, what is the data in your system? Where is it? How do you get to it? And how do you make that data work for you? So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, many of you already know us. We are Quantum PM, and my name is Rose Blackburn. We have been working in the project management space for many, many years. And with that, have learned a lot about technologies that support the project management space, as well as all of the data around it, various other systems that use that data and need to move it forward. So that's what the focus of today's session will be. I won't spend any more time on who we are. I think most of you already know this. We do have quite a few webinars that we've been doing over the past year, so all of these are available to you and have been recorded so that you can go back and listen to them at your leisure. So please feel free to join our website and go in and pick any of the sessions that are out there. These are all general topics, some for specific verticals like healthcare or financial services, others that are more general to the domain of project management. And then finally, this series that we're doing right now, this will be the last for the 2018 year, is Art of the Possible. So a variety of topics here that we've done over the last couple of months. And please do feel free to go out and listen to these at any point in time by going to our website. Okay, with all of that, we're going to get started on the final webinar in this session. And really what we're talking about here is how do you get to all of the data? You spend a lot of time putting that data together, getting information around your systems. You want to be proactive in how you manage all of it. You want to be able to get that information to leadership. How do you do all of that? How do you manage it and move it forward? And a lot of problems that we've run into, that we see with our customers and that others have told us about, are a variety of things here. So we're going to talk through some of these today, and then hopefully understanding what some of the problem areas are, figure out how you can go about building your own reports and dashboards with the right kind of setup for them and the right kind of processes to support them so that you can get the information that you need when you need it. So the things that tend to happen, and these are major points, there are plenty more, I'm sure, not having a clear understanding of what the metrics are. You all know that whatever you measure, you can get results on that, but they may not be providing the kind of information you need, or more importantly, getting the kind of results you want. You can make the measurements be what you wanted them to be, but are you actually changing the organization in the way you want to change it? Not having one place to go to get data is a very big problem that many organizations have, and that's a tricky one to manage. With systems like Project Online, you have a ton of data there and available to you, but you don't necessarily have everything that you need there either. So there are other things that maybe you have to do to accomplish getting to the data that you need. So data spread across a lot of different sources. It's input from a lot of different places. Where do you go to be comfortable that that data is accurate and reflecting what you need it to be? And then just general reporting technologies. When you look at reports, do they tell you anything? Are they intuitive enough that you can read them and immediately know what's going on in the organization? Or do you even have the data that you need? So those are the kind of things we're going to talk through today. And with that, we'll move it forward. So key metrics. This is the place to start. You can measure a ton of things and get results from that. But are they the things that are important to your organization? So we'll spend some time talking about how do you get to the right information, the information that really matters for your organization. And that's taking a step back to understand what it is you're measuring, why you're measuring it, and what happens when you measure that. What kind of behaviors do you get in the organization? So to think about that a little bit, this slide is intended to take you through all of the things that are possible that you can do with the data that's in your system. So if you think about the tons of data that you have, what important processes does that data tell you about? What kinds of things are you learning from it? Are they going to help you measure performance or measure the kinds of things that get you closer to the goals in your organization? You can measure whether people are involved in a project, or you can measure the status of a project. What's the right information that you need to move you forward? And based on that, then do those things support the key indicators in your organization to make those things actionable? And when you think about actionable kind of data, you've got to think about that in terms of the audience that you're talking to. So different kinds of organizations need different kind of data. This example is showing a manufacturing organization. So you might have plant management. They need very specific information around what people are doing, what machinery is doing, what supplies are coming in. So things that are very imminent in managing the business. From an operational perspective, there's a little bit of different information that those people are going to need. It's a little bit more forward thinking, a bit more about supply, different kinds of things that they might need to know. And then corporate management, of course, is going to be looking at a bigger picture, longer range kind of view of the world to understand things. So you need to have information for each one of those audiences that makes sense for them. So where do you get that information? There's a ton of data in these systems, and the tricky thing that we run into most of the time is that information is stored in hundreds of different spots, and it's going to be stored wherever it's comfortable for individual users to put the data. So Excel seems to be a favorite, and you'll see that scattered through all of this. There's a lot of data that lives in Excel spreadsheets, and that actually ends up being the real source of truth. That's where people put their information. That's the place that it's the most accurate. But that's not necessarily in a system that they're going to be able to support and share with other people. It often ends up sitting on somebody's desktop and then gets emailed to somebody else and moves around the organization that way. So probably not the best method if that is going to be your source of truth. So you got to really think through, what do people do each day? How do they run their portion of the business? And how do you get that data so that it's accurate and timely into the systems that you're using? And that data lives in a lot of different places for very good reasons. And this is just an example from some of the organizations that we work with. We've had organizations that are sales driven, so they work with systems like either Salesforce or Dynamics 365, one of those platforms where they register opportunities and learn a lot about their customers through that getting something started part. Then that information needs to drive, once they win a contract, that drives the projects that they're going to do. So now we're talking about putting data into a different system, Project Online, or whatever other systems they might be using. Maybe it's SharePoint, maybe it's some other place. If you have software developers in your organization, they may use a completely different system for tracking how they're making progress on their projects. So it might be in TFS, Visual Studio, DevOps, as it's now called in the online world for Microsoft. Many organizations use software development tools like Jira. Organizations use things like ServiceNow to track all of the tickets that are going on in the organization, to manage the applications that they have. And of course, you have a ton of organizations who also have financial data that lives somewhere else in SAP or in Oracle or wherever it might be. And people are going to naturally work with the systems that make sense for the kind of work that they're doing. So the challenge for project management leadership, PMOs, is how do you get that data into one place so that you can analyze it, work with it, and manage all of it. And then once you have that data, how do you make it into something that is useful for your organization? So I pulled out a few examples of data that isn't necessarily telling you a lot of good information so that you can actually do something with it. So the reports on the left-hand side, those graphs, different ways of showing the same data, but it's very unclear to me when I look at that. Okay, this is monthly rejects. I don't understand what that's trying to tell me. It's got too much information piled up. All of the years are in the same place. It's not telling me anything where I can intuitively look at it and say, oh, we went up this month, we went down this month. There's nothing in there that tells me that at a glance. And that's the kind of thing that you're trying to get to. The other side, the eye chart version of the world, is where there's so much data, you just can't even drill in to figure out which piece of that do you care about. What's important in that big spreadsheet. So those are the kinds of things that we end up with a lot of the times in the reporting that we end up doing. And I'm going to pause for just a second and make sure that everyone is hearing properly and if there are any questions at this point in time.
So we are having one issue we're trying to resolve with someone not being able to hear Rose. So
okay.
Other than that, there's no comments. So working on it.
Okay. All right, then I will go ahead and move forward. Hopefully we can get that fixed here momentarily. Okay, so those are the problems that we end up having. This is one of my favorite problems because after you spend all of this time putting together data, and putting reports together, you can look at this one and tell that no one is updating anything here. What the heck is going on? So you can have wonderful reports, but if people aren't using them, you're not getting the data that you need. So there's a whole process issue behind all of this as well. You can spend a ton of time putting together great reports, but if you don't have the processes and the technologies in place to make sure that that data gets updated, that the data is timely, it doesn't do you any good. So those are some of the things that we have bumped into over the years, various ways that we've seen problems that cause our customers to struggle with the systems that they're dealing with. So how do you get around that? What do you do to make it better? Okay, so let's start with the reports themselves, the kinds of data that you put into these graphics. How are you going to make them turn into what you want them to be? So here's some fundamentals around what you do with good graphs to make them become what you want them to be. So you want to make sure that you portray information without any distortion. What they're talking about here is making sure that you don't change the parameters so that it looks better than it actually is. And one example I have of this is we had an organization that was trying to compare several different projects, and they wanted one of those to look really good compared to the others. So they manipulated the chart so that it showed a big gap between the others simply by changing the parameters on the graph. Didn't change the data underlying it, but it did make it look like one project was doing much better than the others. When that was discovered, which it obviously would be, it was pretty embarrassing for that group. So not a good way to go about it. You also don't want a lot of distraction in your reporting. So lots of irrelevant information, too many colors, too many things going on, makes it really hard. You want your your audience to be able to immediately look at something and say, oh, okay, I get it. Yes, that makes sense. So the right scale, the right axes, everything about it to make sure that it's clear what you're trying to do. You also need to have good captions and legends on any report that you do. I spend a lot of time digging through reports trying to figure out what the different colors are telling me. It's not always obvious, so descriptions are very, very helpful. And low ink to information ratio, essentially, let's not put too much in here. Too many busy charts make it very complicated. Okay, so back to this this graph that we were looking at a little bit earlier. You have a ton of data out there. So you've got to get that filtered down to what is the data that's important? What are the processes, the things going on in our organization? What do we really need to know? And winnow it down to the information that's very useful. What you'll find in systems, especially systems like Project Online that have so much data available to you, you can get bogged down in trying to do the processing for the reports. And if you can narrow it down a bit and filter out the data that's important from all of the other data for the specific report you're looking at, you'll get a lot faster turnaround, much better performance, and much more timely information. So you want to make sure that you're looking at what are really the key important things. So if we're talking about projects, you want to know how current it is, where we're going to run into problems, specific things that make sense about that particular project. If you're talking about a program, you might be looking at something different. So for each report that you're looking at, you've got to think through those components. Measure that, all of that data then against the enterprise goals. What are you trying to accomplish? So that you have something that's very crisp and clear to the organization, and that it's going to drive you to something that produces an actionable effort on your part. So as soon as that report comes out, you can say, we need to focus on this particular thing and see what's going on with it. It should be very intuitive to you and intuitive to each organization. So whatever organization you have geared this particular report to, they need to be able to just look at it and be able to say, okay, we have a problem in this place. Let's go take a look at that. So you can move through it very, very quickly. So let's drill in now into what makes sense from a project management perspective as opposed to a generic reporting perspective. I like this chart in that it shows a nice life cycle of how projects get done in an organization. So you have everything from the beginning when something is just a concept, it's not a project yet, it's just an idea, it's something that's been proposed to the organization, and then as things get thought through and understood, it gets moved through the funnel and becomes one of the concepts that now is going to become a project. So you're going to select it, and then as you move it along through the process, more detailed planning, and then finally management execution around that particular project. So as you're looking at this from your particular role in the organization, which pieces of it do you care about? If you're running a PMO, you probably care about the entire life cycle because your customers then are executives as well as project managers, and you need to be looking at the entire thing. If you're focused only on the delivery component, then you can narrow that down to a much smaller set of capabilities and things that you need to be concerned about. So just talking through all of these pieces is going to make a lot more clarity around what you're trying to accomplish in your organization. At the left-hand side of the screen, strategic value analysis. These are the kinds of things that you might be looking at. So what's the proposal look like? How well is it aligned to your organization? What kind of costs do you have? What kinds of high-level resources do you have? So forth. All those different things that you would need to know about, things that are coming into your pipeline, so that you can tell your customer, your audience, the kind of information that they need to see. From there, then, as you drive through this a little bit further, you need to also be thinking about the various competencies in your organization, what kinds of things people are needing to learn about, and what is the capability of the organization to provide it. So not everyone can do all of this at the same time. There's a lot of maturing an organization to get you to this point. So you need to think initially about just getting the organization to participate with you in creating the data. You need people to be comfortable getting in and submitting their information, making sure that you can see what they're doing, making sure they're not afraid to put in things, so that if a project is late or it has problems, you don't want people trying to hide that. You want that to be very clear and upfront. Those are the kinds of things that you do at the early stages in the making sure that things are standardized, and you can expect this same level of information moving forward all the time. And then once you move into that next level, it's much more repeatable, much more consistent. You can get a lot more data out of the system. So this maturity model kind of thing is something that you also need to think about when you're doing reporting. You're not going to get level 4 kind of reports in an organization that is still at level 1. So judge your reports and get them to reflect the maturity in your organization, and then you can move it up over time. Okay, so now again, in Project Online or any Microsoft Project Server system, there's a lot of data in that system. And again, looking at it from different kinds of perspectives is what's going to help you develop the right kind of reporting for you. So Microsoft likes to look at it in this view of 5 different categories, general categories of information: projects and portfolio. So the things that are more big picture, driving what the organization is attempting to accomplish, and what kinds of things are going on around how do you prioritize, how do you manage, how do you make sure that you have what you need to get those things accomplished. Then from a resource perspective, you're looking much more at do you have the capacity, do you have the ability to fulfill on the projects that are going on in your organization. At a more detailed level, so for the project manager and for the resource managers, you need to understand what tasks are being asked of your people. What's going on with them? How well are they working? How well are you managing from the plan to the actual? Do you have good statistics around how long something is really going to take to accomplish the work? So different levels, and as you break it down, then you can go all the way to the assignment level. So this is for a particular individual working on a task within a project. How well is that person managing things? What does their load look like? How do you accomplish things for them? And then again, other things that are going on besides just the tasks, execution of tasks in the project. What issues, what risks, what other kinds of things that are at a more aggregate level do you need to pull together? So thinking through each of these things, all of this data is in the system. It's a matter of which pieces of that are important to you based on who you're creating this report for and what do they need to accomplish with it. So again, going back to this, where do you start? Okay, we can create some great graphs, have things looking really good, but you have to recognize that creating good data really does take a lot of time to accomplish it. So For organizations that are at a lower level of maturity, they will have people who are reluctant to put their projects into the system. So they're dragging their feet that way. So you can't even, you can have a great report, but if there's no data coming in, it's an empty report and doesn't do you much good. So the first goal of getting good data into your system is to encourage participation. And that can take some creativity on your part to accomplish it. How do you get people to make sure to put their projects into your system and make sure they're updated? If you have a more mature organization, that's no longer an issue. But getting it in there and getting people to participate is number one. Then the second component in it is making sure that the data that you're getting is accurate data. So you want to make sure that there aren't any things going on in your organization that would make people reluctant to tell the truth. I've certainly seen organizations where anybody who had a project that wasn't in a green status was in trouble. So they would do whatever they needed to do to make it look green, make it look like everything was going well, and just delay the inevitable when everything would come together and crash on them. Not really a great way to manage a project, but you can get really good reports. They look pretty, but they're not accurate. So you've got to make sure that there aren't any penalties in the organization for giving accurate information. So first participation, then make sure it's accurate. And once you've got that in place, then you can go for improvement. You can't improve something if you don't have good data. So that's the step-by-step method for getting that accomplished. And this is a leadership role to make sure that happens. You can create some very interesting incentives to get people to get their information in and to get it in on time. You can use software to help you encourage that participation. And I'll show you some examples of that here in a little bit. And then make sure that nobody's being punished for giving accurate data. So one of the lessons that I learned early in my project management life was I had a project that was a good-sized project, and things were going pretty well, but I was in the early stages of the project. So I had reported it was in green status. Everything was good. And from my perspective, it seemed like it. I had a very wise leader who said, that project is too big. There is no way that it can be in green status. There's got to be things that are going on that will change that. So I'm very suspicious of seeing a project that big in a green status. So tell me more about it. Which was a great lesson for me to learn, that I was looking at it through rose-colored glasses. I needed to look at it a little bit more accurately to get to the right information. So let me give you a few examples here, and then we can go look at live things in the system to show you more about what's going on. What we're looking for in reporting is very intuitive things. So you've got an easy way to get a big picture just in a quick glance at it. I can look at this and say, oh, okay, I see what's going on. I've got this many projects. I have this kind of money involved. I can see what's going on from who's working on what, how well my compliance is going, and so forth. And then if I drill down a little bit further, I can go into any one of these elements up here and drill into that particular component a little bit further. So I want to look at my projects by overall health and see what that looks like. So drilling in, here's that pie that I was looking at earlier. I have a lot of projects that are in these various red, yellow, green states, and then I have quite a few that are just getting started here. So there's nothing, no stoplight kind of indicator for them yet. Maybe I want to drill into that a little bit more. So I might want to drill in and look at the projects that are green, or I might want to look at the projects that are red, or whatever the case might be, and move forward from there. So different ways to drill down on your projects and make sure that that you can get the information that you need and again, geared to the right level in the organization. So someone who needs to see something only for the manufacturing organization might want to click here and drill into just those projects. So you're trying to make sure that the data that you're providing is the right data for the right audience. So as we move that forward, then here's another example from a more of a resource perspective. A resource manager may need to look at things in different ways and see what's going on in the organization from that perspective. When you get to resources, that's a very challenging area to look at. There's a ton of data, so you have to be very careful about making sure that you have some good ways to get to that data. And create reports that will be able to be refreshed and be accurate. So a lot of filtering, things like this will help. Filtering, narrowing it down from all departments to the ones that you need to work at, maybe to a particular group, maybe to a particular structure within the organization, even some filtering here by specific names. All those kinds of things can be very helpful in getting to the right information. So here would be then that next level of drill down to a particular resource in the organization and what's going on for that particular person. And any one of these would be an area where you could drill into a little bit more and see things. So I can see a lot about what this person's has going on and has for this particular year in time. Okay, so that's the part that comes from a system like Project Online. You can get all the information that you want out of that, and those particular slides are all from just a standalone Project Online instance where you can drill in and look at things for that. But often in organizations, you need data from different places, as we were talking about earlier. You need data from an Oracle application, or you need data from SAP, or maybe from ServiceNow. So depending on the kind of organization you are, people naturally work in a lot of different systems. So you have data sitting in a lot of different systems. And if that's the source of truth, you don't want to have to pull that data into a spreadsheet and other data into a spreadsheet and manipulate it there. The data becomes stale. It's hard to work with. So other options for dealing with multiple data sources is where we're going for now. So I'm going to introduce you quickly to BIAdvantage, which is a system that Quantum PM has to allow you to do that kind of integration across a variety of different systems. And it's more than just a place that mashes things together for you. You allow your users to work in whatever systems they're comfortable working in, and then you have rules within the system to pull the right data at the right time so that you can present data appropriately and get it to the people who need it very promptly, very quickly. That's the intention behind having a system like BIAdvantage that will pull all that data together. And it doesn't really matter what the system is that it's coming from, as long as that is the source of the data, the source of truth. We can pull it in based on the rules that are appropriate for timing, for accuracy, a variety of different things, and get you to something that is more tightly integrated, where you can trust that you have the information you need at the time you need it. So here's another example, pulling data in from a financial system into along with data from Project Online through BIAdvantage and getting you to something that will provide more data around what the financial information is around what's going on. And you're closer to the source, so the data is more timely and more accurate. Again, lots of ways to do the filtering, lots of ways to do different kinds of things with the data, but trying to stay as close to the source of data as possible. Other things you can do to help you with that is to make sure that the processes in this in the organization are being well used and managed, so that you don't have to spend a lot of time chasing people to get data into the system. So this is just an example of how you might do that. So this is for accuracy around employees submitting their time to the system. So again, using BIAdvantage as the system where all that data is consolidated, it's monitoring to see who has submitted their timesheet, when it's been submitted, if there is any errors of a specific nature in it, that those can be corrected before it gets really added into the system. Emails out to maybe managers or their particular staff manager, their project manager, as appropriate, based on when data is needed in the system. So you might send a nag message only to the people who haven't submitted their time, so you don't blast out spam messages to everyone in the organization after a certain time on Monday, for example. And then if things don't get in, then maybe you'd be sending out an email to managers for them to help you get things moving forward, and so forth. So later on in the process, there might be new rules that you put in place. All of that can be automated in the system, so that you don't have to be spending your time nagging people to do what they're supposed to be doing. You make it as easy as possible for the data to come in and be as accurate as possible in a timely manner. So again, just an example of what that might look like. So just a simple reminder goes to one person to let them know that they need to get something done. Lots of criteria around when you might do that, how you might do that, but systems like BIAdvantage can do that automation for you so that you don't have to do it. Other things you want to look at when you're going to be dealing with multiple sources of data and trying to get really timely data is to make sure that you're looking at things both from an active perspective, preventing problems from coming into the system, as well as that passive perspective of when things are late, sending out notifications. So other ways to look at things and prevent errors from coming into the system are also very important. So if you can do some proactive management of things to, say, prevent milestones from being wiped out of a project schedule, or prevent people from overwriting something that you know is supposed to be there, that kind of thing can really help improve the accuracy of the data that you're looking at. I don't think I'll spend any time on all of this, just give you an idea of how all of those things work together, so that you can have both the active management, proactive and reactive management of all the data in the system. Okay, with that, I'm going to take a little pause, and then we'll switch gears to go into more of a live demo of what systems might look like. So I will pause and see if there are any questions at this point in time.
It doesn't look like there's any questions, but if someone does have a question, know that you can type that into the box at the bottom.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to switch gears then and go into some active examples of systems here, so that you can see some of the information that's possible in using both a project online, project server kind of setup, and also using something with BIAdvantage where you're pulling the data from multiple different sources. So in this particular example here, I'm using Power BI. This data is coming from a demo system that we have set up in our world here. So a variety of different projects that are in that, tons of different things that you could see here. And these are demo projects, so they're not necessarily accurate or in good shape. We put a lot of data in here to show things that are wrong. So you'll see whatever we have going on in that system. So this is a system I'm pulling the data from. And the example I had pulled up here is to give you examples of things that are problems that you might see. So this is coming from Power BI, standard package that comes with Power BI associated with Microsoft Project Online, so you can get to this and do whatever you want to with it very easily and quickly. This is all a part of a standard package. And you can see here things that you should be monitoring. So this is a way for you to be more proactive in how you look at the data that's in your system. So overdue and upcoming milestones. You can see a whole bunch of things here that are really old, really out of date. Obviously, we are not properly managing those particular projects. So something needs to be done with those. Here's another way to look at that kind of data. Projects not updated in the last month or with incomplete work in the past. That's a good thing to understand. If people are not updating the projects properly, you're going to get bad data in your system. You're not going to have what you need for it to be appropriately active. So just various ways to create different kinds of indicators to help you manage what's going on. And you can see some of these become eye charts. Probably not a great way to look at things, so you may want to do some filtering. You may want to have some other ways in here to get to that data so that you're not doing that sort of thing. Let's look at I had a few screenshots in the other system for you, but let's look at this one actually live. So here's an executive dashboard that you could look at. And again, any one of these items here, if I click on that, I'll be able to go into that particular area and look at something, drill in more into, say, cost or into the risks that are showing up in the organization. And each one of these, as I click on it, then will take me into a different area. And I'll be able to look in more detail at what's going on there. So the idea here is to just be able to very quickly, at a glance, be able to find what you're looking for. I want to be able to see just the issues by this high category. And as I drill into that, then it's going to be able to give me that information and take it further down. So different ways of looking at all of the data in your system. And you want to make it just as quick and as intuitive as you can possibly make it be. So here's the one of a project status overview of all the projects in the organization. But if I only want to see the ones that are in this manufacturing group, and then I want to drill down there and get to those and see what I've got there. And then maybe I will drill in to a more detailed level and see what is going on any particular project at any point in time. These are the kinds of dashboards that leadership tends to really like to see because they can give them some independence in being able to look at things. It's very intuitive. You don't have to learn a ton in order to get in here. You simply have to have access and be able to drill in and get to where you want it to be. On this page, this one is using that same Project Online database, but also pulling data in from other sources. So this is using BIAdvantage to get to the data. And here, just a different way to look at things again. So in here, you'll see we have a ton of filtering going on, different kinds of things to look at. So I could look at only the ones here that are 20% over baseline cost, or I can rearrange it any way I want to. I might look at particular types of projects, potentially. So lots and lots of filtering. And the idea behind this is to make sure that you can get to what you need to do for your particular role in the organization as quickly and as effectively as possible. Lots of different ways to look at things. Resources are always a challenge for organizations. So ways to get to resources and understand what's going on from a resource manager point of view or from a project manager point of view. I would like to be able to, if I'm the project manager on a project, I want to see every resource that's working on my project. If I'm a staff manager and I have Adam working for me, I want to see every project that he's working on so that I can look at things that way, be able to see all of it over time. So different ways to look at all of the data, and always the more of it you can have, the better off you'll be. So that's the essence of what we wanted to get to today. I'll go back to just a final wrap up here. If there's any questions that you have around the software or specifics around getting to different kinds of data, I'll be open for questions here at this point. So let me know what questions you might have. And from there, I will give you a few moments to ask questions. And
does anyone have any questions? You can also unmute and ask, I think, at this point, if you'd like to.
And if not, then we're going to thank you for your time. And please do feel free to give us a call at any point in time. We've got a ton of different things that we've been doing around reporting, good examples, bad examples, different ways to look at the data. So please do feel free to reach out at any point, and we'll be happy to work with you. Thanks very much for joining us today.